taking care, the mission of religious sister. And today I'm very happy to have with me Sister Maryanne Loughry, and she will be one of the speakers during the forthcoming webinar, July the 8th, on taking care. Welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Maryanne, you are connecting from Australia. Am I right?
You are right. I'm here in Sydney, and unfortunately we are in lockdown, which is a bit of a surprise for us. But the Delta variant has come into our city and very near me. So just at the moment, I'm confined to home. Yes.
We can fully understand the Rome situation is a little bit different. So this is more or less what we are talking about, about taking care during and after a pandemic time. We can say after for some countries, but we can say within the pandemic for others, like yours, for instance. So why care or taking care is so important, Maryanne?
Well, thank you for the question. I've been giving this quite a bit of thought, and I want to begin by saying that sometimes we do move around with different words, and care is one word that we're very familiar with. But I think we might also find that people are talking at the moment also about kindness and also about compassion. So forgive me if I move around those terms, so I recognize the difference to them. But I think what's happened is, for me, two things have happened. One is that we've all been brought almost to our knees by this pandemic. The pandemic has stopped us from doing things we were very familiar with and has brought a lot of self-reflection. What is it that we're about? What are our priorities? I think it's been particularly troubling for the young who've been constricted in their classrooms, in their movements, whereas those of us who are a little bit older maybe have had a chance to reflect on what's important. And I think for us as religious, it's also caused us to pause and think about our ministry and our mission at this time, because we are renowned for being people who want to care. I'm a sister of mercy. We want to show mercy. And how do we do it in these times? I think the other thing that's caused reflection for us has been Pope Francis, because we've had a great deal of leadership in his papacy, in him inviting us to think about what is it that we care for in our world, and what is it that we maybe should care a bit more about but haven't taken into account. So I think just to summarize that bit, I think this has been a time for pause, and it's made us do a lot more thinking about what is the nature of caring. But if I can also say, Patricia, and this might sound a bit odd, but I also think it's a time when we know more about caring than we possibly have known for a long time, because I'm a psychologist, and as a result of this time, I've been looking a lot more into what we know about kindness and caring in our brain, how our brain works, the competencies, the capacity we have to care. And in recent decades, positive psychology has showed us that we can actually be taught and trained to care more. And that's been of great interest to me. What are the elements and how can we become better carers?
Thank you very much, Maryanne, to focus on the caring attitude at the individual and communitarian level. What we want to highlight during the forthcoming webinar is how caring and taking care might become or might be a profound pastoral attitude. This is not just for ourselves, but also as a pastoral attitude of the religious sisters. What do you think about that?
Yes, it's interesting. As you know, I've been talking recently to sisters who are being trained to be formators. And they very much made me become aware that the culture of being a sister sometimes has made us think we need to be selfless. We are called to be for others. But what I've been teaching is that we can often only be for others if we are also looking after ourselves. And we found that quite a challenge to explore, because some sisters would say, well, that's being a bit selfish. It's not what we're familiar with. We make sacrifices. And I've been saying from the psychological perspective that if we care for ourselves, it enables us, it's an imperative almost to care for ourselves so that we can care for others. And I think what we can do in caring for others and caring for ourselves is set examples. We can call others to be with us. We can learn from others how to become more caring. And that can help us to combat the kind of fatigue that some of us have from having been on the front lines and cared for a long time and now feeling just a bit overwhelmed or possibly exhausted. So I've been thinking that caring's important in our communities. It's important that we have good practices and policies to care for each other. And in doing that, that enables us to work with others to bring about care in a bigger societal setting. The other side of that is, I think, if we also work with others to make our society more caring, then that helps us to be stronger people ourselves. So I see a kind of working on caring at several levels, at our inner self, psychologically, spiritually, physically. Then in our communities, how are we caring communities for each other? We have particular challenges with some sisters aging, with sisters also having different ministries that they're not as engaged with as they were in the past when they ran them, and now they're more accompanying them. But then also, what's our role now as religious in our society, and what can we contribute through what we've learned in the past and our charisms that demonstrate our wish to bring the love of God into our world.
As you know, the members of USG are the leaders of the congregation.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, this time was very hard for some of them to lead the congregation and also to take care of themselves. So can you tell us something about taking care and leadership?
Yes. No. Thank you. I think it's been a very taxing time for all, but for those in leadership, it's been particularly taxing because we were in some uncharted territory. What to communicate, how to communicate, how to keep sisters safe, but then how to keep our ministries open. And as I said before, I think the problem is we're impacted as well. So the leaders are impacted by the fears, by the concern, by the stress and strain of the pandemic, as well as being called to show leadership in it. And what I've been wanting to emphasize is, again, that they need to not only model a good response and an appropriate response, but to make sure our communities have had practices and policies that allow the sisters to also respond appropriately. So as you'd know, there were concerns immediately about who could go out, who couldn't go out, what happened inside the community, how we communicated, what happened when sisters were dying, how we were able to be with them, but possibly not directly, but like by video or in prayer. So those sorts of challenges, but also the leaders themselves having the kind of capacity to restore themselves so that they could keep giving in a situation that was very, very demanding. And I think that was what I talked about then, was also about the need for rest, the need for routine, the need also to have some supervision, to be able to talk with each other and with somebody who's a little bit more on the outside, so that you could be checking what you were doing and your own reactions. Now, I know that the leaders know these skills, but it was like they were having the double impact, because they were also experiencing what was the major stressor.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Marianne. I think this answer will be very helpful for our leaders and members. I have a couple of questions more, and the first one is how we can nurture this care, this caring attitude, kindness. How we can nurture that at the personal level and the communitarian level too.
I think, no, thank you for the question. I think it's a question of, some of it's a question of communication, because first of all, none of us are the same. So different events, different stressors, different experiences impact people differently, because we come to these experiences with different resources and different capacity, and also different previous experiences. So the opportunity to share, to communicate what's going on in our lives with significant others, so that we can actually understand our own experience, but also understand the experience of others. And I think that sometimes leads to what some people call courageous conversations, where some of us need to be challenged, some of us encouraged to be more open or to be more flexible. And in community, that's something that we do all the time, but I think this might have led us to realize we need to do it a little bit more consistently, and also how to do it across the age range and the experience range of community. In my own formation, I was very early sent out to experience like an immersion, where I met with peoples in society that I wouldn't normally have experienced, refugees, Indigenous people, homeless people. And then I was taught eventually some skills to understand their experience. And I think, again, if I can go back to Pope Francis and other church leaders, one of the challenges is for us to be with people who are of concern, people who are suffering in our world. And sometimes we have to be taught to do that, and we have to be encouraged to reflect on what that means. And we also need to be given some skills of analysis as to why this situation is as it is. And as I say now, the science is showing that as we have more understanding, we can possibly be more empathetic. We can be led to experience with others their suffering and to enter into their suffering. And I think that can be more evocative for us of a response that's much more indifferent to ourselves, but more appropriate to the people that we're ministering to. So I think it's a taught skill rather than something that we're just born with or God-given.
Yes, and listening to you, I think that we really need this forthcoming webinar on taking care, because USG is really taking care of many different projects who can reach different kind of marginalization and difficulties.
Yeah.
And listening to you, I can also dream courses and training within religious life to learn how to be kind, compassionate, and merciful in this time of pandemic. So the last question, Marianne, is which kind of care, if we need a special care to cope with this, to recover from this pandemic time?
Well, I'm not sure I have one answer for that, because each of us is different, as I said earlier, and we also have different cultures, we have different resources available to us. I hope this doesn't sound too controversial, but I'd be saying I'd be concerned that people don't become totally reliant just on a spiritual response. Of course, I think the spiritual response is a cornerstone of our existence, but I think some people might need to have additional sort of responses, whether it's time out or whether it's a deeper learning of what they've experienced and how they can integrate that now into their life moving forward. I think it's kind of, it needs to be considered almost like a number of choices, if I can say that. I'm just a little bit concerned that if we leave it to being just totally, I take this to my prayer, it's not sufficient unless the prayer is wrapped around other experiences of deeper reflection and opportunity to maybe take time out or to, as I say, share deeper in community as to what people's needs are. So I think it could vary considerably. I do think we also have to realize that in the last, well, now moving on towards 2 years, we've all changed. So our chapter statements, our ways of being, our capacity has changed in these times. And I think sometimes we've changed exponentially because of the experience. It's been so profound and collective. So I think that will possibly call us to need to think quickly, what's our next priorities and what's our strategy to get to those priorities? And of course, as you know, we work in partnership with many people in church, parishes, lay people. So we need to do that in partnership with our church members. And sometimes they don't have so many resources like we do to be called to reflect on where do we want to go to now. I just don't think we're going to resume life after the pandemic as if, well, that was a bad experience, now we move on. We might need to reprioritize or to rethink where do we want to go from here.
Thank you very much, Maryanne. And I think we will talk more about the different aspects on taking care during our webinar, July the 8th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Rome time. And we will be very happy to listen to you again. So thank you very much to help us to reflect on how care can be one of the pillars of our life.
Oh, no, and thank you for the topic. It's a very important topic. So I look forward to Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maryanne, and see you soon.